Israel has approved a new multinational peace framework. It is not routine diplomacy. The structure, the timing, and the number of actors involved signal a pattern that has circulated for years in prophetic analysis. The move does not complete any forecast, yet it marks a junction where political strategy and long-observed models intersect. What stands out is the coordination across regions that rarely align on security terms, the speed of consensus, and the quiet concessions embedded in preliminary statements. These elements form a sequence that recalls the warning when they say peace and safety. Thessalonians 5, not as a conclusion, but as a reference point. Something is shifting under the surface of global order. Agreements once viewed as hypothetical are entering formal agendas. The world treats it as Israel's cabinet has formally endorsed a 20-point Gaza peace framework. The plan is backed, in writing, by the United States, the United Nations, key Arab governments, and several European partners. It is the first structured agreement of this scale since the 2023 Gaza war began. It does more than pause hostilities. It reorganizes how Gaza, and by extension the conflict around Israel, will be managed. At the core is a phased ceasefire tied to conditions. Demilitarization steps are mapped to specific timelines and compliance benchmarks. International stabilization forces are assigned defined sectors and mandates. Reconstruction is not left to ad hoc donors, but is linked to an agreed financing and oversight mechanism. Governance is placed under a technocratic administrative body, with limited local participation and strong external supervision. The framework carries formal legal force. A UN Security Council resolution has embedded its main pillars without a veto from any permanent member. That fact alone marks a change. It indicates that, for now, all major powers see benefit in a controlled, internationally managed Gaza file. This is different from previous rounds, when ceasefires were brokered regionally and left deliberately loose. In parallel, the diplomatic setting around Israel has been shifting for years. The Abraham Accords opened a path for normalization between Israel and several Arab states. Quiet defense, intelligence, and economic arrangements followed. Now, with this Gaza framework, a new layer appears: shared responsibility for security, reconstruction, and administration in territory directly linked to the conflict. The architecture is incremental: normalization agreements, regional partnerships on energy, trade, and airspace, security coordination against shared threats, and now a multinational governance structure with Israel's cabinet approval as a central hinge. Piece by piece, a managed regional order is being assembled around Israel's position, not outside it. From a prophetic observation standpoint, this matters less as a single event and more as a configuration. The agreement does not fulfill specific biblical prophecies. It does, however, echo familiar patterns: multilateral covenants, international oversight over contested land, and repeated moves to stabilize Jerusalem's vicinity through external guarantees. They say, "Peace, peace, when there is no peace." Jeremiah 6. The words are old. The mechanisms are modern. Key elements often noted in prophetic studies are still absent. There is no restored temple, no formal global religious structure seated in Jerusalem, no singular, binding global covenant centered on one leader. Yet mechanisms now exist that could interface with such developments if they emerge in the future. UN resolutions, multinational forces, regional normalization networks, and technocratic governance models. The purpose here is not to set dates or announce fulfillment. It is to note how political structures are forming that mirror long-discussed patterns. A local war in 2023 has triggered a process that, by 20 defined points, pulls the conflict into a managed, multinational framework. Most observers treat this as routine diplomacy. It is not. It marks a shift in how power, control, and oversight around Israel are being arranged. Something is consolidating, largely unnoticed. The core event and its structure. Israel has approved a 20-point Gaza peace framework. The decision is formal, recorded, and unanimous enough to move the conflict into a new phase. It is not just an Israeli document. It is structured around external guarantees, shared oversight, and defined enforcement channels. The framework exists because a wide circle of states has agreed to anchor it. The United States holds the strategic weight behind the plan. The UN provides the legal and procedural channel. Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, the UAE, and Bahrain supply regional access and political leverage over actors inside Gaza. European partners contribute financial commitments, reconstruction expertise, and diplomatic continuity. International peacekeepers prepare to secure corridors and monitor compliance. Each role is distinct. None stands alone. The arrangement moves the Gaza file from local negotiation to multinational management. The framework establishes a ceasefire tied to specific benchmarks. It outlines demilitarization in phases, not as a single event. Weapon removal, tunnel mapping, border control, and enforcement mechanisms are laid out with operational timelines. This is not typical language for temporary truces. It signals a shift toward long-term containment, aligned with external supervision. Reconstruction is not left open. A coordinated fund, overseen by international administrators, is set to control resource flow. Infrastructure rebuilding is linked to demilitarization progress. Audit procedures are written into the agreement. This ensures that money, materials, and projects remain under predictable oversight. It also limits the return of independent armed governance. A technocratic administrative body is central to the plan. It contains no partisan leadership. Its mandate is temporary, but structured enough to carry real authority over services, civil operations, and coordination with external partners. The body is required to interface with peacekeepers, UN agencies, and regional states already invested in Gaza's stabilization. This creates a network of interlocking responsibilities that none of the actors can easily disengage from. The UN Security Council resolution is the hinge. It passed with 13 votes in favor and no veto. 2 members abstained but did not block it. That detail matters. It gives the framework international legal standing. It also shows a moment of convergence among powers that often diverge on Middle Eastern issues. The resolution provides legitimacy, continuity, and a shared reference point for future disputes. What emerges is a structure that shifts Gaza from a contested zone to an internationally managed space. Each component reinforces the others: ceasefire enforcement, phased demilitarization, reconstruction oversight, and technocratic governance. The system relies on broad cooperation. It also creates a precedent. Once a conflict moves into formal multinational administration, later adjustments become easier to justify. The event fits into a pattern. Regional conflicts gradually move from local control to international frameworks. When timing, alignment, and legal authority converge, a new stage forms quietly. The nations rage, but they do not prevail. Psalm 2. The text stands without commentary. The present moment carries the sense that a larger arrangement is forming, and most of the world has yet to register its significance. The underlying pattern behind the agreement. A clear trend is forming around the Israeli-Palestinian file. The center of gravity is shifting from bilateral negotiation to multinational management. The shift did not arrive suddenly. It advanced through successive layers that now interlock with notable precision. The Abraham Accords marked the first major layer. They created normalized ties between Israel and several Arab states. At the time, the agreements appeared limited to bilateral interests. Yet they introduced a regional logic, economic cooperation, security dialogue, and shared infrastructure plans. These channels reduced isolation and established steady lines of communication that bypassed older diplomatic patterns. The second layer formed as normalization expanded. New states entered discussions. Defense coordination deepened. Airspace agreements, energy partnerships, and intelligence links became routine. These movements built a regional environment where Israeli-Arab cooperation was no longer an exception. It became a working structure. The third layer is the Gaza framework. It binds multiple actors into a single operational plan with defined responsibilities. This is not a side agreement. It connects the United States, the UN, Arab partners, European states, and international forces in one synchronized framework. The structure reduces unilateral decision-making and increases external oversight. It also reinforces the idea that the conflict can be regulated through collective administration rather than closed-door bargaining. These layers show a movement away from isolated deals. The region is aligning around broader stability mechanisms. Each layer tightens the next. Normalization created access. Expanded cooperation created shared interests. The Gaza framework creates shared management. None of these elements stands alone. Together, they reflect an emerging design, an internationalized approach to issues once seen as strictly local. The pattern signals a transition. Instead of fragmented arrangements, the region is edging toward a comprehensive alignment supported by global actors. This alignment is not final, but it is measurable. It has legal backing, political momentum, and operational structures. It also shifts leverage from individual negotiators to multinational bodies with long-term mandates. A subtle motion is visible. Decision-making power is dispersing outward. Oversight is consolidating upward. Regional actors are adapting to a system where international guarantees define the limits and possibilities of future agreements. The movement fits a broader observation. The nations gather together. Joel 3. The words stand without expansion. They echo against a landscape where states assemble frameworks that reshape control incrementally. Most observers see separate diplomatic events. The pattern suggests something more connected. A structure is forming piece by piece, and the world registers each piece without recognizing the forming whole. The relevant prophetic framework. Two statements from Scripture often surface when analysts review patterns of broad political alignment. Daniel records, "He shall confirm the covenant with many." Daniel 9:27. Paul notes, "When they shall say, peace and safety." 1 Thessalonians 5:3. These lines stand on their own. They do not map directly onto current events, yet they frame a category. Agreements involving multiple actors and public declarations of stability during uncertain transitions. Recent developments around Israel fit within that category of observation. A growing number of states now anchor regional arrangements. Security, reconstruction, and governance frameworks are being shaped through collective consent. The language of peace initiatives is present in almost every official statement. None of this signals fulfillment. It signals structure. The pattern worth noting is the scale of participation. The many is no longer theoretical. It is visible in statements, votes, and synchronized policies. The terminology of peace and safety appears in diplomatic briefings, press releases, and multinational communiques. These movements do not complete any prophetic sequence, but they position the region within a framework long analyzed. A quiet shift is underway. Agreements deepen. Actors multiply. And the world registers the activity without grasping its convergence. The convergence with today's geopolitical landscape. Global sentiment has shifted toward de-escalation. Years of conflict, economic strain, and geopolitical uncertainty have produced a collective desire for stability. This sentiment is not driven by optimism. It is driven by fatigue, strategic necessity, and the recognition that unmanaged crises now spill across borders with unusual speed. Gaza has become a focal point of this calculation. International actors see clear incentives to stabilize the territory. For the United States, regional calm supports broader strategic priorities and reduces the cost of prolonged engagement. For Europe, instability fuels migration pressure and security risks. For Arab states, escalation threatens internal balances and economic plans tied to long-term development. For global institutions, Gaza represents a test of whether coordinated management can contain a conflict that has resisted traditional diplomacy. These incentives converge. The convergence explains why the Gaza framework has held political attention even under intense scrutiny. It also explains why states normally divided by ideology or alliances have maintained their support. The stakes extend beyond the Strip itself. Stability in Gaza connects directly to wider energy corridors, trade routes, and regional security networks. Existing normalization frameworks have remained intact. Public pressure has challenged them, but none have collapsed. The resilience is notable. It shows that underlying strategic interests outweigh short-term tensions. Economic links, defense coordination, and intelligence exchanges continue beneath the surface. The relationships built through the Abraham Accords and subsequent expansions have created a network that does not easily dissolve. This continuity matters for one reason. It reinforces a structure where states align around Israel's security architecture, even when political rhetoric spikes. Practical cooperation persists. Quiet consultations persist. The region is recalibrating around shared calculations, not sentiment. Nations are also positioning themselves around Jerusalem, directly or indirectly. Diplomatic missions, security arrangements, religious access agreements, and economic initiatives all orbit the city in some form. None of these movements are symbolic. They reflect a recognition that Jerusalem remains a strategic node. The city influences political legitimacy, regional narratives, and long-term security frameworks. These alignments do not produce immediate transformation, yet they shape the environment in which future decisions will be made. They tighten the web of interests surrounding Israel. They concentrate global attention on a single point, where religion, politics, and territorial control intersect. Jerusalem shall be a burdensome stone. Zechariah 12. The line stands without elaboration. Its resonance is clear in the ongoing attention the city receives. A global pattern is forming. De-escalation efforts consolidate. Normalization endures. Incentives align. Jerusalem remains central. Most observers track these developments as separate issues. The movement becomes clearer when the pieces are viewed together. A steady reconfiguration is underway, and it advances with little public recognition. Something is taking shape in plain view, yet the significance remains largely unacknowledged. The current alignment emerges at a moment when the region is worn by prolonged conflict. The strain is cumulative. Governments face internal pressure, security fatigue, and limited tolerance for new escalations. This environment reduces resistance to structured agreements. It creates a space where coordinated solutions appear more practical than continued confrontation. Global powers are operating under their own constraints. Economic slowdowns, electoral cycles, and shifting alliances increase the cost of open-ended crises. These pressures do not push them toward ambition. They push them toward manageability. Collective agreements offer shared responsibility, reduced risk, and predictable timelines. This is why broad coalitions now form around conflicts, once handled through narrower channels. The Middle East is entering a phase where multinational structures face less opposition than in previous decades. Regional actors have recalculated. Multilateral frameworks provide financial resources, diplomatic cover, and security guarantees that individual states cannot easily secure alone. The Gaza arrangement fits this shift. It shows that international administration, once a rare outcome, is becoming an accepted mechanism for stabilizing contested spaces. The timing is significant. It lands within a period of accelerated diplomatic activity around Israel. In recent years, normalization agreements expanded. Defense cooperation deepened. Energy corridors gained momentum. Trade routes linked new partners. These movements created a foundation that makes multinational structures feasible today. The Gaza framework is not an isolated decision. It is part of a broader diplomatic rhythm that has intensified since the mid-2020s. What stands out is the convergence. Regional exhaustion, global constraints, and existing networks all align at once. The alignment allows for decisions that would have faced stronger resistance in another season. It also allows for agreements with multiple layers: security, governance, reconstruction, and legal recognition. Each layer strengthens the others and reduces the likelihood of reversal. This moment also shows how quickly the diplomatic environment around Israel can shift when incentives align. The pace of consultations, the number of involved states, and the speed of consensus reveal a political landscape in motion. The movements are steady, coordinated, and not easily dismissed as routine. The broader pattern resembles a slow consolidation of influence around key regional points. Jerusalem remains central. Israel's security architecture remains the hinge for discussions across continents. The region adapts to these realities even when public narrative suggests fragmentation. A quiet momentum is forming. The decisions appear pragmatic. The timing, however, suggests a deeper recalibration. The vision is for an appointed time. Habakkuk. The line stands without interpretation. It marks the sense that events are unfolding in sequence, not in isolation. Most observers see only diplomatic necessity, yet the layers, the timing, and the scale indicate a coordinated shift. Something is advancing beneath the surface, and the world has not fully recognized its direction. The agreement, now in place, does not fulfill prophetic conditions. Key elements remain absent. Even so, the mechanisms taking shape resemble patterns long noted in biblical analysis. Multilateral covenants are becoming standard. Regional realignment continues through normalization, shared security structures, and coordinated political frameworks. International involvement around Israel intensifies, not by symbolic gestures, but through binding resolutions, operational mandates, and long-term administrative roles. The significance rests in the structure and the timing. A multinational framework of this scale appearing during a period of global strain is not incidental. It reveals a shift in how states manage conflict near Israel. Authority disperses across institutions. Oversight increases. Responsibility becomes collective. These movements match the type of alignment that observers have tracked for decades. This moment does not invite premature conclusions. It invites clarity. It invites disciplined observation of how each layer connects to the next. The Gaza framework is one step in a larger architecture that is forming gradually and with little public awareness. Watch, therefore, Matthew 24. The words carry weight without commentary. The region is reorganizing. Global actors are converging. The pace is steady, not dramatic, yet unmistakable. What emerges is a system that strengthens over time and shapes the environment for future decisions. The alignment is not final, but it is advancing, and it warrants close, continuous attention.